collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
On this week's programme, we'll find out what the proposals are in Parliament for extending maternity leave.
Today we should have been discussing increasing maternity leave to at least 6 months for each child.
Hear about a project to promote dry stone walling on the island.
The farmers, they used to construct dry stone walls in order to accumulate soil and turn the land into cultivations. Today we need them to support the soil that we've been destroying with various developments as a result of fires.
And you're invited to take part in the Nicosia City Race. There are categories for children, families, veterans, and elite runners.
We already have quite some elite runners from Europe already entered. We have runners from United Kingdom, Italy, Ireland, and France already entered.
A bill extending maternity leave is being discussed in Parliament at the moment by the House Labour Committee. Sitting on that committee is my next guest. He is George Koukouma. So, George, we've already got maternity leave, but for many years people have been saying it doesn't really go far enough when we compare ourselves to other, particularly Northern European countries. What is being discussed now?
Last Tuesday, the Parliamentary Committee on Labour and Social Insurance of the Parliament discussed maternity leave, paternity leave and parental leave. And on this occasion, the Labour Minister, Zeta Vilianidou, announced that the bill extending maternity leave for second and third child will be tabled these days to the Parliament, and we all agreed that this will be discussed next Tuesday as a matter of urgency. And at the same time, we are still waiting for another bill from the government on paid parental leave, which is an EU directive adopted on 2019, and Cyprus had the obligation to comply with its rules. So if we take it one by one, first of all, maternity leave. The bill, which is suggested by the government, provides for 4 additional weeks for a second child, including adoption or through surrogate mother, and 8 additional weeks for a third child. That is what the government said.
Can I just interrupt you there and ask why it wouldn't be more sensible to just say it's X number of weeks maternity leave, regardless of whether it's the first, second or third child?
Okay, we fully agree. So while we understand that, of course, the bill is a step forward, the government's announcement lag far behind from what modern social needs. Today we should have been discussing increasing maternity leave to at least 6 months for each child. And this is not what we ask as the opposition. This is what the World Health Organization itself recommends, because it has health benefits for both the mother and the child. And also extending maternity leave not from the first child, but for the second and 4 weeks more for the third, has a conceptual mistake which has been noted by women's organization. Extending maternity leave is not an incentive for demographic policy. It's an obligation from the state to the mother and the child. And of course, another point on this issue of the maternity leave, we should have a state in 2021 that ensures that maternity leave, it is fully paid. Now, only 72% of the salary is paid to the mother as an allowance, not from the state budget, but from social insurance fund. But when we know, and everybody knows in Cyprus, that 45% of working people in Cyprus are paid a gross monthly salary of 1,250 euros, how do we expect this working mother to make ends meet for 4 months? During these months, her expenses will have been skyrocketed because of the birth of the child, on a benefit that is 72% of her salary. So the matter of the paid maternity leave is also one of our main concerns.
All right, but you said that this was going to be discussed and go to the House fairly quickly. Is it not possible to make some of those adjustments and still get it passed by the House, or is that going to delay things dramatically? It just seems to be being made much more complicated than it needs to be.
The problem is that the Parliament, it would be unconstitutional to make changes, alterations to the bill, which increase the state budget. So we are a bit with the hands tied as a Parliament. But we stress it very clearly to the Minister last Tuesday that these are the main concerns, not of the opposition or any MPs, they're the main concerns of the society and working families, working parents now.
And what did the Minister Zita Emelianidou say?
That is what the state can do at this point. Okay, but I think that society on this matter should push as much as it can.
Right, let's talk about the parental leave and, of course, paternity leave, because the other thing is that it's only recently in Cyprus that I think fathers have been able to take some of the maternity leave, if you see what I mean, instead of the mother, but they don't actually get paternity leave as well as, do they?
It's not from the mother. They have the right for 2 weeks of paternity leave. It is a step forward, the introduction of paternity leave in Cyprus, but there are two things that should be corrected in our point of view. Now, every father must be entitled to paternity leave only if he had entered into a marriage or a civil partnership with the mother. But we think that every father, despite his relationship started with the mother, has the right for paternity leave to be with his child. We're not living in 1960. There are societal changes, there are modern ways of partnerships. So this is an issue that, as a girl, we insisted on that when the bill was introduced and voted on 2017. But the government doesn't seem to change opinion. And another issue on the paternity leave. Now paternity leave must be taken within the first 16 weeks of the birth or adoption of the child. In practice, that means that the father will take his paternity leave the same period as the maternity leave. However, this means that for this period, both parents will have to live with a reduced income, 72% of their salary, which in many cases for low-wage employees gets very difficult. So we propose that the father should be able to choose when will take his paternity leave in a period of 52 weeks from the birth. So these two changes we think will improve paternity leave.
And have those changes been put into this bill that you're discussing now?
No, that was for maternity leave. This for paternity leave were proposed by a girl many times, but they cannot pass if the government rejects them, because it's changes that increase state budget. So it's unconstitutional to change the state budget as a parliament. So we need the consensus of the government on that.
Okay, what about parental leave then? Explain the difference.
Parental leave is very important for working parents. That means for 2 months, both parents will have 2 months of parental leave, which can be taken at any time until the child is 8 years old. So you can absent from your work for 2 months for each child until he's 8 years old. This is very important, I think, for...
Yeah, because it does mean that if a child is sick or anything like that, you have a way of taking care of them.
And the improvement now is it's a paid parental leave, because until now, it exists parental leave now, but it's unpaid, which you understand is a bit meaningless gift for most working parents. So now it's not a government bill. We are expecting a government bill to comply with the directive of the European Union, voted by the European Parliament on April of 2019. So the credits go there, not the government. So from the government, we're expecting the bill as soon as possible for a paid parental leave. The deadline from EU to member states is August 2022. So we hope we will have it sooner than that. But I'll tell you that one of the first thing I did after my election last May was to submit a parliamentary question asking the minister to give data on how many working parents take the unpaid leave, because my impression is that are few. And at the same time, I asked the Parliament services to make a comparative analysis between Cyprus and other member states on the issue of the parental leave.
Just tell me when you expect this new bill to go through Parliament and become active.
On maternity leave, I think we will have it before the end of the year. That's my impression, because all parties will agree on that. The main concern is that lack of far behind the needs of the society. But we have to open the discussion, the full discussion about the comprehensive social policy, comprehensive family policy in Cyprus. A modern state in 2021 is not built in towers and casino, but having this kind of social policies, maternity leave, paternity leave, to have a developed network of kindergartens, high quality and affordable for every family. These are the issues that we have to discuss.
Well, they're small steps, but at least they are steps going forward. That's George Koukoumas from the House Labour Committee telling us about plans to revamp maternity leave, paternity leave and eventually parental leave.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
I don't know about you, but whenever I've watched farming programmes, I have always been absolutely fascinated by dry stone walls. So much more friendly to our environment than cement. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now, because coming up at the end of this month, on the 29th and 30th of October, there's a dry stone wall. Well, I'm not sure whether we call it a conference or a hands-on activity, but my next guest is going to tell us all about it. She is an architect and an environmental engineer. Her name is Antonia Theodosiou. Antonia, thanks for joining me. First and foremost, can you explain how widespread dry stone walls are in Cyprus? Because I know, for example, in the UK, they withstand all weather, and some of them have been standing for literally hundreds of years. Do we have something similar here?
We have dry stone walling since antiquity in Cyprus, and when we refer to antiquity, we refer to the Hellenistic time, also to the Roman, and even before the first settlement in Ma Paleocastro had defending dry stone walls around it since then.
So these are ancient structures, but how many of them are still in good enough condition to call them dry stone walls, or do we need to go around the country and do our bit to put them back the way they should be?
I think we should do this. It's a very good idea because referring to the antiquity, since I'm not an archaeologist, but I'm interested in dry stone walling, the information in this respect is very scarce. But today, the workshop or the hands-on events you referred to, they refer to the rural dry stone construction and specifically to the retaining walls. Because there are all sorts of dry stone constructions, not only in Cyprus, but in general worldwide. And in Cyprus, they used to be very widespread, and they are indeed hundreds of years old. I need to emphasize on this because some people say that they can't stand the weather conditions or the conditions of being used by animals, etc., and they collapse, but they never consider that these walls, they stand already, they have been standing for hundreds of years. Tell me, how would it look if they were made out of concrete and stone, let's say?
Well, that was my point exactly in my introduction. We've got so much concrete here in Cyprus, and dry stone walls are pretty. they blend in with the environment, don't they?
Yes, they are like a lace. I refer to dry stone walling as that this is the lace of the human-made environment, of the anthropogenic environment, the landscape, let's say. But today, because of the bad situation that has been developed due to the fire outburst in various regions in Cyprus, they are more essential than even before. The farmers, they used to construct dry stone walls in order to accumulate soil and turn the land into cultivations. Today we need them to support the soil that we've been destroying with various developments, in the case I referred before, as a result of fires. I know that the Ministry of Environment with the Water Department, they're developing now wireframes with rappels in them in order to halt the soil erosion.
Well, that's a temporary measure, surely, isn't it? It won't have the same long-lasting effect as a proper dry stone wall.
No, it will not. It will not. But they are drastic measures because of the, let's say, winter coming.
Okay, and I guess they've got to act quite quickly. But tell me a little bit, if you will, about this event at the end of the month and who you're hoping will come, because if somebody's never, ever built a dry stone wall, how easy is it to learn? You've got to pick the shape of the rocks you use very carefully, haven't you? It's a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle, I think.
It is. You must love the art or the technique. We always refer, as Greek-speaking people, we refer to the art of dry stone, but it's actually the technique, which has been acknowledged by UNESCO 3 years ago as a technique. Well, I don't know where to start from. I have to start from now. There is a program running, which is called 3 Protos, that has been undertaken by the Cyprus Institute. And I'm collaborator in this sense with the Cyprus Institute. And among others, I need to do 12 workshops for the villagers of the Geopark of Protos. So the first one has already taken place, and it has taken place in Oran, and it was meant for the villagers of Larnaca and Limassol area, which have been damaged by the fire. I didn't know myself if there would be any interest, because I've done such workshops before, and there was interest, but I had to call a lot of people. There were 2 workshops, for example, in Agamas. So there was a great interest. Each workshop is meant to be for the people either having an occupation in the specific area where the workshop is taking place, or be a permanent resident. And I have the highest number that I would like to have in such workshops is 50 people. And I have to hold people back, actually. And now there is a demand for even more workshops in this area.
That's great news, Antonia. But you're talking about this particular project which is dealing with those fire-ravaged areas. But what about it spreading out more widely? There's no reason, is there, why you couldn't build a dry stone wall around your urban property if you wanted?
Well, that as well. But the project I was referring to before is an agroenvironmental program. Is dealing with cultivations on terraces that have also dry stone walls. This is the theme. This is the topic of the program. But you could have dry stone walling also in urban areas. Actually, the town planning department, as well as the archaeological department, they give grants. If you do declare your house or your property as an ancient monument or as a listed house, and there is dry stone walling in your property, then they give also some grants to to redevelop them.
Well, at least we're seeming to recognise the importance of something like this. So what would you suggest if anybody is listening to this who has never before even tried their hand at dry stone walling? It seems you're pretty full up this time round, but are there possibilities of joining a future workshop? And indeed, let me ask you, where does the material come from? I can see that up in the mountainous areas there's probably quite a lot of it lying around, but where usually would it come from?
Well, the stones, they were usually collected from the fields themselves, where there was a lot of stone around, and people had to pick them up to enable the cultivation of the plot of the area. And at the same time, they were doing boundary walls or retaining walls, etc. So it has to be local stone. In Orat, because of the fire, the stones, they were not so useful, so we bought them from a nearby quarry. But in Pedulas, which is the coming one, and there is another one in the middle of November, they are going to be collected from the fields around. There is also a lot of erosion that comes together with stones from after the streets construction, etc. So they are going to be collected. We are not going to use stones from quarries, which is very important for the ecology.
Yes, because quarries in themselves are very destructive, aren't they? Final question, because we're running short of time here. When you collect these stones, can you use them as they are, or very often do you have to maybe have a chisel to just shape them a little bit to fit the way you want them?
It depends on the stones. Part of the tiles can be constructed as they are, but you have to know how to use them, how to put them one on the other. And there are others that need a little of working out. You asked before if it is an easy technique. I think, and this is what I see from the workshops, that you need to be careful to look at traditional ones, to listen to some experienced craftsmen very carefully, and to put your hands on the material. If you do this, normally there are schools for dry stone constructions in Mallorca, in France, and in Switzerland. These schools, they have a schedule for 1 year's lesson. But I can tell you that if a person has a practice for a week, then I think that we'll be able to construct dry stone walling.
Wouldn't it be marvellous to have lessons about this in our schools? But I'll have to leave that one there with you because we are out of time. But if people would like to find out more, where can they, Antonia?
Well, at present they can go to the website of the Three Protons of the Cyprus Institute, or on the Facebook of the Institute, and download the information for the two coming workshops, the one in Pedulas and the other one for Palehori.
It's really fascinating. Let's hope we see many more of these beautiful dry stone walls around our island, and particularly in those areas which are in danger of a lot of wet winter rain washing away the topsoil. Antonia Theodosiou, architect and environmental engineer, telling us there about dry stone walling.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Nicosia is taking part in the City Race Euro Tour. It's an orienteering event, and my next guest is one of the organisers. She is Diana Bridger. The Nicosia City Race, Diana, is it the first time that we've done this? It seems to be part of a pan-European event, is it?
Yes, it's an immense privilege for Nicosia to be taking part in this. We were invited to take part in 2020, but it was postponed to this year due to COVID. And orienteering is one of the sports which is actually quite COVID-friendly because it's an individual sport. And the runners and competitors start off at 1-minute intervals.
There are two events, I think, one in a park and one in the old part of town. Talk us through what people who sign up to take part will have to do.
Well, the event on the Saturday is a warm-up event, and that's going to be at Athalassa Forest Park. The start is at 10:30 in the morning, and everybody has to have a safe pass, obviously, and you enter online beforehand. And the main event will be in the old city of Nicosia, which is like a lovely labyrinth of streets. And they'll be looking for control markers, and it's a navigation exercise. There will be different categories for all age groups. We have youth, which is 16 years or under, juniors, which is 17 to 20 years, women elite city race, which is the 21 to 39-year-olds, veterans from 40 to 54, super vets from 55 to 64, ultra vets from 65 to 74, and hyper vets for 75 years and older. And as you can see, it is a sport for all ages.
If you've got so many different people running, are they all doing this at the same time?
They will be, but they won't all be on the same map, and you won't know who's in your class. So there's no point in following everybody because every age group will be on a different map. Everybody will start at 1-minute intervals. And there's also non-competitive fun classes, and people can go in little family groups if they want for those as well.
Right, and there's also a touristic class. What's that?
And that is where we're going to have control markers outside some of the main landmarks in the old city.
And so are you hoping that people who happen to be here on holiday will perhaps sign up and then do this way of looking around the old Nicosia?
Yes, that's certainly a possibility. In fact, we already have quite some elite runners from Europe already entered. We have runners from United Kingdom, Italy, Ireland and France already entered.
And so how long is the whole thing? I mean, let's start with the Athalassa bit that's the sort of, you said it was the preparation. How long is that?
Well, probably the longer elite classes will probably have to run about 7 kilometres, and they'll probably have about 18 controls to find, whereas the youth or hyper vets will have a much shorter course of only maybe a couple of kilometres and probably only about 10 controls to find. And that will also be true in the old city as well on the Sunday.
For somebody who hasn't ever done orienteering, can you sort of explain what it is?
Yes, it's cunning running. It's the thinking man's running sport. Orienteering, you have a little electronic chip on your finger, which we will issue you if you don't have your own one. And you start and you have your map, and it's finding a control by using your map reading skills and punching in with your electronic tab, and then off to the next control.
For people who are Nicosians, are they at an advantage?
Yes, it would certainly be an advantage if you know the streets of Nicosia, definitely.
OK, and is that taken into consideration for the people coming from abroad?
Yes, but they consider themselves elite runners. Nobody will know the courses until they start, so you can't go out and practice it. It's just a local knowledge, and we can't stop people walking around the old city of Nicosia to familiarise themselves with the city.
So on the 21st of November, if they happen to be walking around the old city, they can expect to see a fair few runners going past them.
That's correct, absolutely.
How long does it take to set something like this up, Diana?
Several weeks, and we've had good support from Visit Nicosia, and the Deputy Ministry of Tourism have also supported us, and we'd like to thank them very much. Our local club, Orient Action, we work very hard on this.
And prizes?
Yes, there are no money prizes. We have some nice prizes on offer, and they'll all be locally made, maybe some pottery pomegranates or something like that. We like to sort of keep everything local and support our local industry when it comes to things like that.
And when is the deadline for people to register? Because I presume you need to know pretty well in advance how many are in each category.
Yes, the deadline is the 15th of November. You have to enter and pay before that. We will not be accepting any entries after that date unless you're prepared to pay double the entry fee. And the entry fee isn't very expensive. It's only €15 for both stages.
So €15 you get to do both Athalassa on the 20th and Old Nicosia on the 21st?
Yes, or €8 if you're non-competitive.
Where can people find out more?
You can look at our Facebook page, which is Nicosia City Race 2021, or you can email us for information, which is nicosiacityrace@gmail.com.
And that is Diana Bridger telling us all about that event coming up on the 20th and 21st of November. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.